Ellen McCauley at Parade Off in Syracuse, New York. You know, it's funny. Next week I'm going to talk about Weight Watchers. They have an interesting eating plan. And I've already talked about a 1,500 calorie plan. I've already talked about Whole 30. I can talk about Weight Watchers. But what's really funny is I never think it's about the food. I never think it's about the food. Because everybody knows that if you're going to have a bagel with cream cheese and donuts and waffles and bacon, and then for lunch you're going to have a Reuben with Thousand Island dressing and ice cream sundae, and for dinner you're going to have pizza and wings. Everyone knows. Don't we? Don't we know? So I can put all the diets in the world in front of you, but you have to choose. Now, choosing gets muddy because we're living under stress, we're living under anxiety, and a lot of us are living under the weight of baggage that we hold on to, that we don't even know we're holding on to it. Like, there's people that have wronged us so desperately in our lives that we think about those situations and we get so angry that we drink and eat. And tonight I want to talk about forgiveness. Forgiving others and also forgiving yourself. Because forgiving others is interesting. Because things happen at work, for example, and you get so upset about it, you come home and you overeat. But if we think about forgiveness, usually we think about someone being sorry. Someone comes up to you and they say, you know what, I'm really sorry. You know, I had a terrible day and I never meant to say that to you. Will you please forgive me? Yes, thank you so much. I'm so glad you mentioned that. But what about the person who's not sorry? What about the person who is dead and that you can no longer have them say you're sorry? There are people in this room that are victims of terrible childhood abuse. And I'm not going to go into a lot of details because I don't want people to think I'm talking about them. But many of us have experienced terrible, terrible things in our lives. And if we hang on to that anxiety, if we hang on to that. But I want to talk about forgiveness. Forgiveness is first and foremost an internal process primarily for you. It's not for this other person. It's for you. Forgiveness is a path to freedom. It does not require the other person to be sorry. How has being unable to forgive affected you? Have the emotions you felt affected your health? Have they altered your relationship with others, your worldview? What sorts of defense mechanisms have you created? Do they limit you? You know, and I want to stop and talk about myself only as an example to you. I read this and I said, you know what's funny? I forgive everybody. There's not one person in my life that I don't forgive. I forgive them all. And then I said, do you really? And I'm like, yes I do. But then I thought about it. And I really thought about it. And I said, I have forgiven the person. But you know what I do? I bring up what happened. And I play it over and over in my mind. And then I get all upset about it, even though I've forgiven the person. And then I get so stressed out and I start blaming myself. I think if you were smarter, if you did this, if you weren't so naive, if you weren't so stupid, things like this never would have happened to you. So what I've done is I've taken, I forgive everybody. And then you blame yourself for these situations. And they don't have to be terrible, like someone tried to kill you. I'm not talking about something like that, just situational things. Then you end up blaming yourself. And then you get stressed about it. So how do you can't forget the things that happened to you. You can't have amnesia. But what you have to do is observe them like a kind and loving friend and say, oh, Ellen, You think you were stupid. You were just being kind. You were just being loving. You were young. What did you know? I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of the person you've become. I'm so proud of how kind and loving you are. Will you please let that situation go? Will you stop bringing it up in your mind? Because guess who brings it to our minds? Satan. And you know, people think I'm the church lady talking about Satan here. But that is real. And you know, you can compartmentalize it and say, you know, I'm not going to revisit that anymore. I'm not going to overeat about it. I'm not going to stress about it. Yeah, it happened. But I was young, I was this, I was that, whatever. If you forgive others, you have to forgive yourself. And you also have to stop thinking about it over and over again. Ever have a toothache and you touch it, and you touch it, and you touch it, and you touch it. There are certain events in your life that it's okay to say, you know what? I'd rather not talk about that to yourself. I'd rather not. But let's say you're the kind of person who doesn't blame yourself. Let's say it's everybody else's fault. This happened and you can't forgive that person. Let's say someone hurt your child. You know, I look at myself and that's different. But if someone hurt my child, thank God that didn't happen to me. I mean, little things, playground fights, but something big. How hard is that to forgive? But the forgiveness is for ourselves. And there's health benefits from forgiveness. There's just decreased anger and negative thoughts, decreased anxiety, decreased depression and grief, decreased vulnerability to substance use. If we also try to look at every situation and blame ourselves, you know what we're trying to do? Be perfect. I'm not perfect. A lot of people who have weight issues are trying to be perfect. The perfect worker, the perfect wife, the perfect mother, the perfect prayed-out facilitator, the perfect everything. And that perfection leads to such stress that you overeat. I want everyone to consider a situation in which another person had to forgive you. Have you ever gone up to someone and said, you know what, I am so sorry when I did X, Y, and Z. And what if that other person said to you, you lousy toad, I will never forgive you as long as you live, as long as I live. I hope that's never happened to anyone. But then one of the things about Alcoholics Anonymous that I love is making amends. If you're hanging on to baggage and you think, why have I never apologized to that person? So many people die and their families are so dysfunctional. They're not talking or this or that. If that happens in your family, be the bigger person and go, can we just forgive each other and go on? Can we just love each other now? Are there injuries you need to forgive? What is your purpose in life? Isn't it to love and serve God? God gave us the Our Father, and it says, forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And if we're not forgiving someone else, how can God forgive us? Think about that. Also, Corrie ten Boom. Anyone know who Corrie ten Boom is? I love Corrie ten Boom. She hid Jews. She was a Christian. And during World War II, she survived, but her family did not. She liked to say that when we confess our sins, it's like God throws them out into the deepest ocean, and then God posts a sign that says, no fishing allowed. Because isn't that what we do when we revisit our sins? We're fishing. I know I confessed this and I know I'm sorry, but boy, I'm a piece of crap. Boy, I did this. But then Corrie was tested. Here she was at this speech, and this prison guard comes up to her. He extends his hand and says, I found Jesus. Will you forgive me? And she stood there and said, I can't forgive him. I can't. He, her sister died, or her family died. And then instead she said, Jesus, help me. Jesus, help me. I cried when I read this. Because as she describes it, a wave of warmth rushed down her arm, and she was able to say, with what she knew was God's love, I forgive you. Forgiveness is only fair because we've received the mercy of God. Let all bitterness and wrath and anger and clamor and slander be put away from you with all malice, and be kind to one another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another. And even the Catholic Catechism says, God's outpouring of mercy cannot penetrate our hearts as long as we have not forgiven those who have trespassed against us. Love is indivisible. We cannot love the God we can't see if we do not love the brother or sister we can see. Forgiveness does not mean we're forgetting what someone did to us. It doesn't mean that when she forgave that prison guard, she forgot her sister was killed in the prison camp. It just means that you decide to forgive. It doesn't mean that it didn't matter, because things that don't matter don't need to be forgiven. They do matter. And it doesn't mean that the other person even has to be sorry. Let's say someone hurt you terribly as a child, and that person is either dead or you have no knowledge of where that person is. That forgiveness is critical for you. Also, you need to take your mind off the person you can't forgive and ask God to help you. Remember that you're a sinner too. And Romans 12:14 says, bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse them. I'm going to stop right there, Bobby.